Farmer Dean had seen all kinds of animals on his land over the years, but nothing could have prepared him for the strange creature he found wandering onto his property one morning. This animal was unlike anything he'd ever come across. Its odd features left him completely puzzled. Worried it might be injured, he called up a local vet for help. But as the vet examined the creature, his expression turned pale, and that made Dean's heart pound with a mix of nerves and curiosity. Dean's farm sat right near the edge of a forest, so wild animals passing through wasn't unusual. In fact, he sometimes left out a bucket of sheep food overnight so deer could grab a quick meal. It was all harmless, until one particular morning when Dean spotted something on his land that looked like it had come out of a bad dream. At first, Dean thought one of his goats had broken out of the pen, so he rushed over, trying to grab it. But as he reached out and got a clear look at its face, he realized right away it wasn't one of his goats. Dean stepped back in shock, clearly disturbed by what he was seeing. But the animal didn't seem bothered at all. It just kept wandering around, like nothing was wrong. Dean froze for a moment, unsure of what to make of it. He studied the creature closely as it bumped into things like it couldn't see properly. Curious, he circled around to get a better look at its face. And then it hit him. The animal's eyes were so swollen it could barely see. Thinking it might be injured, Dean called up an old vet friend to come take a look. He didn't explain too much over the phone. He wanted to see his friend's reaction in person. "Carl, you've got to come check this out." "Just trust me, you won't regret it," Dean said, trying to convince him. Sure enough, that got Carl's attention. Dean gently picked up the strange animal and placed it in an empty goat pen, setting out food and water. The animal seemed completely comfortable and even started wagging its tail, looking happy to be there. It had some goat-like traits, but something about it was totally off. In fact, it reminded Dean a little of a mutated rabbit, though he quickly shook off the thought. That would be way too wild to believe. Curious, Dean snapped a few pictures and uploaded them to a local farmers' forum. The forum was mostly used to warn neighbors about things like wolf sightings, but Dean hoped someone might recognize the animal. The photo drew a lot of attention, but surprisingly, none of the other farmers had seen anything like it before. Out of nowhere, Dean got a call from Carl. "Where are you?" Carl asked the second Dean answered. His voice was tense and concerned as he brought up the photo. "I was just heading out when I saw that picture online." "Is that the animal you wanted me to see?" Dean was caught off guard. The forum was private. How did Carl even come across the post? "What photo are you talking about?" Dean asked, confused about how the image ended up on Carl's phone. "Stop messing around, Dean." "I'm serious. I'm on my way right now," Carl said quickly. "Oh, and take that picture down." Now he hung up before Dean could say anything else. Dean had never heard his friend sound so panicked, and that alone told him this was more serious than he thought. He rushed back into the house and opened his laptop to remove the photo from the farmers' forum. But as soon as he logged in, he was stunned by what he saw. His inbox was overflowing with messages, and his screen wouldn't stop pinging. Turns out, one of the farmers had taken a screenshot of Dean's post and shared it on Facebook. The picture had gone viral, and because it had Dean's name tagged on it, people were now flooding him with messages, wanting to see the creature for themselves. Even a news station had reached out, asking if they could run a story about it. Everything was happening way too fast. Dean slammed the laptop shut and started pacing the living room. He kept glancing out the window, anxious for Carl to show up. It was quiet outside, almost too quiet, but something in the air felt heavy. Dean checked his watch, wishing Carl's truck would pull up any second. Whatever this was, it needed to be handled, and quickly. Suddenly, a van came screeching to a stop right outside his house. Dean rushed out, thinking it had to be Carl. But as soon as he saw the crowd forming, his heart dropped. It wasn't Carl. It was a bunch of reporters, cameras, and microphones already aimed at his front gate. Caught off guard, Dean tried to stay calm as the reporters bombarded him with questions. The moment he'd felt relief was instantly replaced by stress. He had no idea how to deal with this kind of attention. Struggling to keep his cool, he kept saying, "No comment," hoping they'd get the message. In the back of his mind, he was focused on just one thing: keeping the animal safe from all this chaos. Determined to protect it, Dean positioned himself in front of the gate, making it clear no one was getting past him. He refused to let them get anywhere near the barn where the creature was being kept. He didn't need to explain himself. His actions were enough to show he meant business. Whatever this animal was, it didn't deserve to be paraded around or turned into a spectacle. The questions kept flying, and the growing crowd only made things worse. Carl still hadn't arrived, and the pressure was starting to build. Dean turned and walked back toward his house, ignoring the shouting behind him, trying to hold on to whatever patience he had left. He knew he had to figure something out, and fast. Then, just as he was about to step inside, a familiar voice broke through the noise. It was Carl, calm, steady, and exactly what Dean needed to hear. He didn't hesitate. He turned around and moved quickly to unlock the gate. Dean moved quickly, his actions sharp and focused as he tried to take back control of the growing chaos. Some of the reporters tried to slip through the gate when it opened, but Dean and Carl stopped them just in time. With Carl finally there, everything shifted. Dean waved him inside, and the two of them walked off together, their quick pace sending a clear message. They weren't here to feed the media frenzy. This wasn't about headlines or attention. For them, it was all about the strange animal and making sure it was okay. As Carl pushed past the cluster of reporters and stepped into Dean's house, both men let out a deep breath, the kind that only comes when you've been holding in stress too long. They moved quickly away from the door, shutting it behind them. It felt like closing out a storm. Everything suddenly quieter, like the madness outside had been sealed off. Inside, it was calm, a much-needed break from the circus waiting on the front lawn. Leaning against the door, they listened as the noise from outside turned into a dull hum. For a moment, it felt like they were in a different world, one that still made sense. That simple act of closing the door had created a boundary, something solid between their private lives and the mess the outside world had become. In the quiet of the living room, Dean and Carl exchanged a look, then both broke into laughter. Not because anything was funny, but because they needed it. It was a release, a way to shake off the tension that had been building all morning. The sound echoed in the room, a reminder of the normalcy they were trying to hang on to. But the mood shifted again as Carl peeked through the curtain. His face grew serious as he saw the reporters still camped outside. The look in his eyes said it all. This wasn't going away anytime soon. They both understood they were walking a fine line now, trying to protect something unusual and possibly important while dealing with attention they never asked for. Still, the two stood shoulder to shoulder, quietly figuring out their next steps. The weight of the situation was heavy, but their trust in each other made it feel more manageable. They weren't just reacting anymore. They were preparing. With a deep breath, Dean, caught between nerves and excitement, motioned for Carl to follow him outside. They made their way through the backyard, a path they'd walked 100 times. But today, it felt different. There was a buzz in the air, something charged with curiosity and a bit of tension. Dean kept an eye on the fences and paths, making sure no one was sneaking around. For now, he wanted this moment to stay just between them. As they walked, he glanced over at Carl, watching for any sign of what he might be thinking. What would he make of this strange-looking animal? How would he react to seeing it up close? There was a quiet tension between them, not uncomfortable, just heavy with the kind of understanding that only comes from years of friendship. Each step toward the goat pen felt like it mattered, like they were walking into something bigger than either of them expected. To keep things light, Dean threw in a few casual comments about the farm, trying to keep the mood from getting too serious. But underneath, both men knew They were on the edge of something they didn't yet understand. But even with their casual talk, the serious nature of what they were doing hung heavy in the air. It gave their steps a quiet tension, like they both knew something big was about to happen. Dean tried to keep things light, cracking a few jokes about the usual farm chores and little mishaps around the place. He hoped it might ease Carl's nerves, or maybe his own, even just for a second. They shared a short laugh, but it didn't do much. It felt a little forced, and neither of them could shake the nervous feeling building with every step. As they neared the goat pen, the suspense grew. They were just moments away from finally confronting what had turned Dean's life upside down. Dean slowly unlatched the gate. The rusty creak echoed in the quiet morning like a signal that they were crossing into unknown territory. With one last glance at Carl, Dean stepped aside, inviting him in to see the creature that had left him so puzzled. Carl got to work immediately, pulling out a few tools and beginning a careful exam. Dean stood close, trying to stay out of the way, but clearly uneasy. Carl moved with quiet focus, checking the animal's eyes, listening to its heartbeat, gently pressing around its legs and belly. His calm, professional manner filled the space with a serious tone. Dean couldn't take his eyes off Carl's face, watching for any reaction, anything that might give away what he was thinking. The silence between them stretched out, full of questions Dean didn't want to ask out loud. He hoped for good news, but was already bracing himself for something worse. Then, without warning, Carl stopped and stepped back. His expression shifted, and Dean felt his stomach twist. Something had changed. Carl had seen something, and it wasn't nothing. The air seemed to tighten as Carl turned to speak, finally ready to share what he'd found. It was clear this wasn't just a strange animal. It might be something more. After a short but serious talk, they agreed the animal needed to be taken in for more testing. They didn't want to wait. Grabbing what they could, they quickly put together a stretcher and carefully lifted the animal onto it. Every move was quick but gentle. You could see it in their faces. They both understood how serious this was and were ready to do what needed to be done. Moving in sync, they carried the animal across the yard to Carl's van. Their years of friendship showed in the way they worked. No wasted words, just a shared focus on keeping the animal safe. As they got it settled inside, Dean couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope, though the nerves still lingered. Whatever came next would be big. Back in the barn, they quickly worked out a plan. The last thing they needed was a crowd. They decided to use the back path that wound through thick trees and brush, less chance of anyone seeing them. Speaking in hushed tones and quiet gestures, they finalized everything, showing just how serious they were about keeping this low-key. They used an old, dusty vehicle Carl had parked behind the barn. Nothing flashy, just the kind of truck no one would look at twice. Covered with blankets, the animal was nearly invisible as they loaded it in. It blended right into the country setting, just what they needed to slip away unnoticed. Every little detail had been thought through, showing how committed they were to keeping this under wraps. As they moved through the plan, the pressure was clear. Dean kept a lookout for any wandering eyes, while Carl focused on the road ahead. Their teamwork was smooth, careful but fast. The soft rumble of the van felt strangely calm compared to the storm of thoughts racing through both their minds. As they drove the back roads, staying clear of the main ones where reporters might be lurking, Dean and Carl stayed alert. Every choice they made came from the same goal: protecting this creature, no matter what it turned out to be. They stayed off the busy roads, choosing quieter, less-known routes instead. Their careful effort to keep the animal out of public view showed just how far they were willing to go to protect it. It was clear how much they cared and how committed they were to doing the right thing. The way Dean and Carl worked together, every move in sync, made their bond obvious. Their shared concern for the animal's safety and privacy pushed them to act with purpose, each step taken without hesitation. That teamwork, shaped over years of friendship, was on full display. It showed just how seriously they were taking this and how determined they were to shield the creature from the growing outside attention. When they reached the clinic, Dean and Carl gently moved the animal from the van to a quiet exam room. The clean, still space inside was a sharp contrast to the noise and confusion they had left behind on the farm. It felt like a safe spot, a place where the animal could finally be checked properly. Dean stayed close, offering a steady presence that seemed to calm the creature in this unfamiliar place. Inside the room, Dean stayed right beside it, lightly patting its side and speaking to it in a soft voice. His quiet words and gentle touch showed how deeply he cared. Even as Carl began prepping for the exam, Dean never stepped away. He wanted the animal to feel safe, and in a setting that felt cold and unfamiliar, his warmth and patience made all the difference. As Carl got to work, Dean stayed locked in, his eyes watching every move. The waiting was hard. Each new test felt like it dragged on, and Dean couldn't stop his mind from jumping to all kinds of possibilities. He kept hoping for good news, but tried to stay ready for whatever might come. The air in the clinic was heavy, filled with quiet tension. Still, Dean stayed calm, gently stroking the animal and murmuring words of reassurance. His presence helped bridge the gap between the comfort of the farm and the clinical feel of the room. That quiet bond between him and the creature stood out, a small but powerful sign of trust during a time full of unknowns. As the tests continued, the clinic slowly started to feel more hopeful. Despite the white walls and sterile smell, there was a sense that maybe they were close to finding answers. Dean clung to that thought. His trust in Carl and the work being done there kept him grounded, even as he waited in uncertainty. But that calm didn't last long. Out of nowhere, a group of reporters showed up, having caught wind of the growing story. Their presence instantly broke the fragile peace of the clinic. The tension returned, fast. Dean turned toward the front, watching as Carl stepped up to handle it. Carl stood tall, calm, but clear, and didn't waste any time. He reminded the reporters of the clinic's rules and the importance of what they were doing. He made it clear the exam room was off limits and that no one outside the medical team would be allowed near. His no-nonsense approach put Dean at ease again. The clinic, for now, was still a place they could count on. That tense moment reminded them just how high the stakes had become. But once the reporters were turned away, Dean and Carl got right back to it. If anything, the interruption only made them more focused. With Carl continuing the tests, Dean watched every small reaction, every glance, every note written down. Each moment held a weight to it, the tension growing as they moved closer to finding out what was really going on with the mysterious animal. Even with the earlier disruption, the clinic remains a solid barrier against the chaos outside. Inside, Carl and Dean focus entirely on the animal, safely tucked away from the growing curiosity of the world. This peaceful space gives them the chance to concentrate fully on the creature's well-being, showing just how far they're willing to go to protect and understand her. With a serious look on his face, Carl lays out a stack of documents on the table and begins explaining the animal's condition to Dean. The room falls into a heavy silence as Dean listens closely, trying to take it all in. The strange creature he'd found on his property is actually a deformed goat, one that, against all odds, is pregnant. The news hits hard. It's a major turning point, finally shedding light on the mystery that had taken over their lives. Dean's shock quickly turns into something deeper, a sense of responsibility. He realizes this isn't just a rare animal. She's going to need care, attention, and a safe place to give birth. Everything changes in that moment. Dean immediately begins thinking about what needs to be done. His understanding of the situation shifts, and he knows he'll have to make big changes around the farm to make sure the goat is safe and healthy. Without wasting time, Dean jumps into action. He starts sketching out ideas to adjust the barn and pens, all with the goat's comfort in mind. Driven by a clear sense of purpose, he begins measuring space for a new shelter and collecting supplies. His dedication shows in every step. He's not doing the bare minimum. He's making sure the goat and her future kids will be as comfortable and protected as possible. Dean prepares for the birth with serious care. He and Carl go over every detail, making sure they have the right supplies and setup. Together, they put together a quiet corner of the barn, complete with soft bedding and easy access to clean water. It's clear they're doing everything they can to give the goat the best shot at a healthy delivery. The farm itself starts to change. Dean strengthens the fences, adds extra lighting, and improves security around the barn. It's all part of making sure nothing threatens the pregnant goat or her babies. His actions speak volumes. He's not just doing this because he has to. He truly cares, and it shows. As the time for labor draws near, a quiet sense of anticipation spreads across the farm. Dean, Carl, and even a few folks from the local community keep a close eye on things. There's a shared sense of hope and concern. Everyone is rooting for the goat and her babies. The barn fills with a quiet energy as they make the final preparations. Carl, with years of experience behind him, steps up to guide Dean through what to expect. They go over each step of the birthing process, covering how to help and when to step in if something goes wrong. Carl's calm, steady presence gives Dean the confidence he needs to face the unknown. In this moment, their bond grows stronger. Their shared dedication to the animals they care for brings them even closer. And when the baby goats are finally born, it's pure joy. After everything, the long hours, the stress and the worry, it's a moment of real celebration against all odds. The deformed goat gave birth to healthy babies, a clear sign of just how resilient life can be. Dean, Carl, and the small group gathered around, shared the moment with bright smiles, their joy plain on their faces as they welcomed the new additions to the farm. For Dean, being involved in the birth made the connection even stronger. His care during and after the delivery showed just how deeply the bond between people and animals can grow, especially when built on shared effort and trust. This experience became a reminder of how powerful kindness and commitment can be when caring for life. Against the odds, the goat had brought new life into the world, and for Dean and those around him, it felt like a small miracle. It reminded everyone that hard work, patience, and heart could lead to something truly meaningful. As word spread, so did the support. What began as curiosity soon turned into real care. Neighbors dropped by with feed, supplies, and offers to help. Local businesses even reached out, lending support in any way they could. It was a complete shift. The community had come together around Dean's farm, showing that they truly cared about the goat and her babies. That wave of support didn't just help Dean in the moment, it gave him the strength and tools to keep going. With new volunteers and donations, he was able to make upgrades to the farm, giving the animals more comfort and care. And with each helping hand, Dean felt more inspired to keep working toward better conditions for all his animals. The story of the goat and her babies quickly became more than just a local event. It started conversations about how animals are cared for and what people can do to help. Schools planned visits to the farm, and local news picked up the story. It got people thinking, not just about this one goat, but about how animals deserve attention, respect, and care. With the community behind him, Dean's commitment turned into something bigger, a growing sense of purpose shared by others. His farm began to reflect that shared mission, a place shaped by compassion and action. It became an example for how one moment of care can lead to a ripple effect, touching lives far beyond the farm itself. The help from the community showed what's possible when people come together for a common goal. Through their support, they helped Dean and the animals find a better path forward. The sense of unity that formed became something lasting, proof that working together with shared values really can make a difference. This story stands as a quiet but powerful reminder. Kindness, teamwork, and care have the power to change lives, for animals and people alike. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories just like this one. Your support helps bring more moments of compassion to light.